In 10 days' time, Nigerians will go to the polls to vote for their next president. The elections were postponed by 6 weeks because of massive security threats from the terror group Boko Haram. My next guest is the former governor of Nigeria's central bank, who blew the whistle on corruption in the oil industry, and he was forced out. Lamido Sanusi is now the emir of Kano, a state in the north of the country, and he's taking the fight to Boko Haram there. He is also Nigeria's second most senior Muslim figure. Emir Sanusi, welcome to the program, and thanks for joining me from Paris.
Thanks, Christiane.
Let me first and foremost ask you a very, very important question about your northern region, blighted and under assault by Boko Haram. How much of a bad thing is it that they've now aligned themselves with ISIS?
Well, you know, the idea of Boko Haram or anyone aligning itself with ISIS is frightening, partly because these are groups that represent a lunatic fringe in Islam and who are very ruthless. We have had more than 6 years of Boko Haram, about 15,000 people dead. The prospect of their getting financial support, military, logistics support from a group as ISIS basically frightens all of us. However, there is progress made in Nigeria now in getting territory back from Boko Haram. And in a sense, it reflects a weakness. I think the fact that they've been pushed back and ISIS also been pushed back into Tikrit may actually account for some of those declarations.
Well, you take hope from these developments. Who is pushing Boko Haram back in your area, in Kano, in the north there?
Well, it's largely, at the moment, international armies from Chad, from Niger, from Cameroon in the northeast. There's the Nigerian army, and we hear there are also mercenaries from South Africa. Unfortunately, this is we're paying the price for passivity for 6 years. This is something that should have happened many years ago. But in the last 6 weeks, there has been progress, and we must encourage the state to do that and protect lives and property.
You yourself have had your own life threatened because of the way you spoke out against Boko Haram. How safe are you, and can you actually, you know, succeed in your campaign to isolate them and to bring progress to your region?
Well, first of all, Christian, if I had a way of knowing, for example, that if Boko Haram took my life, they would stop killing people in Nigeria, I'd gladly give up my life. I have nothing else to live for. I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I think the important thing is for every Muslim leader to speak up and for the Muslims to let the world know that this is not Islam, for the society not to accept them and society not to give them accommodation, for the state to protect the people to the best of its ability, and for genuine grievances to be addressed. We have a very unequal society, vertically and horizontally. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of unemployment. There are conditions that have been created that make it possible for youth to be radicalized. All of these have to be addressed at one and the same time. But silence or fear will not be a solution, and it will not stop them from targeting leaders.
I'd like to play for you a little bit of an interview that I did about another issue that is quite close to your heart, and that is corruption. I interviewed one of the opposition candidates, Buhari, who's running against President Goodluck Jonathan. And this is what he said about the state of affairs in your country.
There are serious citizens of this country that said, unless Nigeria kills corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria.
So from your perspective, Emir, will Nigeria kill corruption, or is corruption going to kill Nigeria?
I think for a long time the Nigerian state has been captive to vested interests, and the state has been a site for the extraction of rent. I think the Nigerian political elite must recognize that if this does not change, the country cannot survive indefinitely. We cannot continue like this. There has to be investment in capital. There has to be investment in infrastructure, in power, in healthcare, in education. The state cannot just exist to make a few people very rich. Corruption is an old story in Nigeria. The perception has always been bad. I don't think we've helped matters by being in denial. I have spoken a lot about this in the past. I don't want to say too much because we're too close to an election, and I don't want to be accused of getting into politics. But General Buhari is right. We need to do something about corruption if the country is going to survive.
Well, I mean, you are pretty much quite uniquely positioned to speak about it. After all, you were ousted from your position as governor of the central bank because of the expose on the mismanagement of the National Petroleum Corporation, apparently misappropriating, according to you, $20 billion in public funds. You know, these are not peanuts. This is whole-scale thievery that obviously affects the development of your country and your people. Is there any hope that this will be changed after an election?
Well, you know, my position in the central bank was always that there was this gap of 20 billion between, after reconciliation, between what NNPC exported and what is repatriated to the Federation account. And I raised a number of issues that I think have not yet been discussed and addressed sufficiently. One of them is billions of dollars being paid in kerosene subsidy without appropriation by the National Assembly and against a presidential order, and we don't know who authorized those payments yet. Nobody has owned up to say, I authorized the payments, I made a mistake, it will stop. I think those issues need to be addressed, and until we address them and begin to close all the loopholes in government revenues, we're going to continue to create opportunities for extraction of rent and for the destruction of the economy. Now, it could be 20 billion at the end of the day. After reconciliation, they could account for 10 or 12. I do know that these issues reflect unconstitutional and illegal withholding of revenues from the Federation account. The country is paying the price today. Oil prices crashed. The currency has been devalued. The stock market has collapsed. Government revenues are in very bad shape. Whoever wins, this government or the opposition, will have to deal with these issues. The petroleum sector is a major drain on the resources of the country, and this has to be looked at.
Do you think there is a sense, whether this government or another government, that they care about the North, that they will do something to empower and ameliorate their lives so that it doesn't become a recruiting tool for Boko Haram going forward?
I think what we need is to have federal, state, and local governments focus on the welfare of the people, focus on growing an economy that will create jobs, and understand that there is a very strong connection between economic deprivation and political violence. Many of these things are not just crazy harebrained ideas. They're born out of political calculation to change economic conditions and create opportunities for some people. And they're also born out of the huge inequalities that we see between the rich and the poor and among different regions of the country. I think whoever is in the federal government must recognize that if these issues are not addressed, he's going to find it very, very difficult to govern.
Huge challenges ahead. Emir Lamido Sanusi of Kano, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you very much, Christian.